over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. We've got you fully covered for the Super Bowl. A lot of different prop betting thoughts, a lot of different game picks, predictions, things of that sort. All of them on our landing page over there, which you can find on the front page at BangTheBook.com. Bookmark that, go through that, get yourself some thoughts here for Super Bowl 53. Also still covering NBA, college basketball, and NHL on the daily. NBA picks from Alan Moody, college basketball picks from Kyle Hunter, NHL picks from Parker Michaels. Lots of stuff going on over there at the website. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. 3 segments, all pre-recorded here, all on Skype. We're going to try to do some more Skype segments here because the sound quality certainly is better. Started things off today with Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com. Again, talking Super Bowl props, the SoCon, and 4 games for this weekend. So here is that segment with Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com. All right, I'm joined now by Kyle Hunter, professional handicapper over at HunterSportsPicks.com and also daily contributor to BangTheBook.com. Kyle, how's it going today, man?
It's going well, man. A couple days here till the big game.
Yes, sir, and better audio for us here on this last segment of the week. And hopefully, as I mentioned in the intro there, we'll be doing some more of these Skype segments with all of our guests, trying to improve that call quality. A little bit more of an editing hassle for me, but it sounds better, and really that's all that I'm worried about here with our shows. So Super Bowl 53. I know we talked a little bit on Thursday night. You said your basketball card that you've had a hard time, finding time to break down the Super Bowl. But as we look at things right now, Kyle, New England -2.5, total 56.5. Some of the brick and mortars in Vegas have gone down to 2, a sign that Rams money is finally showing up.
Yeah, I mean, you knew that there couldn't ever be anything more than +3. I mean, they're not going to let it get to 3.5, but it really didn't get 3 very much. I know South Point went to 3, Bovada 3, which, nobody's surprised about that. But I'm a little bit surprised that, it's gone down to 2 some places. And I'm also surprised that the total is sitting at 56. I would assume that the total would get bet back up a little bit as we get closer to the game here. But, it's no surprise to me that this line is so sharp. It's hard to find value on the Super Bowl line. And I think that's why it's a good reason to talk about some of these props.
Yeah, I think so too. And in fact, I actually hadn't taken a look at the total. I didn't realize it came back down to 56. It was 56.5 last night. Interesting to see some more sharp action bump that number down a little bit. So the prop market, 800, 1,000, 1,200 props at some of the sports books that are out there. Absolutely insane to sort through all this stuff. What's on your prop betting card here for the Super Bowl, Kyle?
Well, as you said, I mean, I wouldn't say I've dove into these as far as I'd really like to. Spend so much time on college basketball, and so far this year it's paid off. It's always discouraging for me when it doesn't pay off, spending so much time on a sport like that. But there's so many teams in college basketball when you're trying to get so deep into stuff like that. It can take up your day pretty quickly. But I took some time here last night to look at some of these props. I have to say that the first one, honestly, the one I like the best, is not an exciting one. Safety scored. No. I mean, I know that this is something that's hard to do. It's hard to lay -800. It was -800 last night at Bovada. I haven't looked here today to see if it's still that. -800 is just way too cheap. The public loves taking the over in this spot. The other thing that I like is 5 Dimes has no safety or no overtime. So it has to be both, no safety, no overtime, -575. I like the no safety better there at that price. But I think both of those are good plays. I mean, this is just one of those things that, if you just look at the long term, you're definitely plus EV taking this. It's hard to take -800, and I don't pretend to like it very much long term, but it's not going to happen that often.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think those are a couple of good things to look at there. And yeah, they're chalky, but, as you said, I mean, they're plus EV plays. And really, ultimately, that's what we're trying to do in every sport, in every market, find things that over the long term are going to be profitable. And if you can take no safety at minus 800, no safety or OT minus 575, those are definitely profitable in the Super Bowl over the long term. We talk about game flow. And, one of the reasons why I like the under is I think there could be some sustained drives here in the Super Bowl. And it looks like you've got a prop that sort of illustrates that as well.
Yeah, third down conversions over 11.5. I think this is a pretty good one. Two offenses who've been really good on third down. If you look at their last three games, these two teams have been excellent on third down. I know everybody knows the Patriots were great on third down against the Chiefs. The Rams have been good on third down as well. I think there's going to be some more running in this game than most people think. I think that sets up some third and short situations. The more passing there is, you're more likely to get that first down earlier, where if you run and you get to 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3, it's easier to convert those third downs. I think that third down conversions over an 11.5 is a solid play. I think that both of these teams have been pretty good at running the football. We don't really know on the Rams side who's going to get a ton of carries. Todd Gurley is tremendous. You wonder, is he injured? Is it, something else going on? I think he'll get more carries than he did last game, but they have two guys who are solid in the backfield. The Patriots have some really good options, multiple guys. I mean, they can put out a lot of different guys, and I think that the Patriots aren't going to be just airing it out here. I'm fairly confident that they're going to want to try to go after this Rams run defense that hasn't been very good throughout the course of the season. And like I said, if you think that's going to happen, you have to like over 11.5 here on third downs.
I'll throw out a few props that I'm looking at just in the interest of time with 3 segments here on today's show. I don't want too long of a broadcast, but over at bangthebook.com, I wrote up my game props, player and team props for the Rams, player and team props for the Patriots, then also my novelty and entertainment props. So I'll just throw out, I guess, one of each here on the show. And if you want the rest of my prop selections, you can either check out my YouTube video today, or you can go over to bangthebook.com and look. I think both teams make a field goal greater than 32 yards. This was minus 135 or so at DSI earlier in the week. I would expect this to be a game that is lower scoring. As I mentioned, I like the under. 2 kickers with a lot of leg. I think you've got a spot here where both of these teams, should make some field goals, and neither team really all that great in the red zone either. So, I think that's a situation where we could have some field goals kicked in this game. As far as the Rams, a team prop for them, Rams punt before scoring. This is an interesting one because the Rams, on their opening drives in the regular season, only averaged 33.1 yards per drive. That's the second lowest of any playoff team. Chargers were the lowest playoff team. So I think that's a good one there to take a look at. Patriots, in terms of some of their props, I mentioned the Julian Edelman one earlier in the week. I do like that. Also, one that you mentioned here in your notes, Rex Burkhead over rushing attempts, one that you're looking at. And then finally, for a novelty prop, will Tiger Woods be mentioned on the broadcast? I've got this one at plus 300 out there. This one makes some sense to me because you've got the Masters on CBS, the Super Bowl on CBS, and Tony Romo. If you give Tony Romo the chance to talk golf, I think he takes that opportunity. He played with Tiger Woods in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am in 2012. If Nance says something about the Masters and maybe even asks Romo who he likes, Tiger Woods should be mentioned in that little bit.
Yeah, what was the price on the Tiger Woods one?
Plus 300.
I like that. I think that's a good play at that price. Definitely. Tony Romo is such a good golfer that you would think he would want to take that chance. So yeah, I certainly like that. Just a couple others that I would mention. I think it's hard, first of all, to know what's going to happen with the Rams as far as Todd Gurley's situation. How's McVay going to call this? I think the Rams offensive props are fairly difficult. So I tried to stay away from that. I think I like Michelle over yards. I like Rex Burkhead over on the attempts. Most of the New England rushing over props I like. I think New England's going to run the ball more than most people think. I assume there's some book, I haven't found it yet, that has just team rushing over attempts. I would like New England team rushing over attempts as well. I think that the game plan here should be to kind of soften up things and try to get some big plays passing. I don't think it's going to be just air it out right away.
All right. Well, we covered a lot of Super Bowl stuff. There will be more Super Bowl stuff later in the show here with the odds report with Brent. So, for our listeners interested in Super Bowl stuff, a lot of stuff throughout the week and also that final segment here today. Some good videos over on our Bang the Book YouTube page as well. All right, let's chat college basketball because, hey, this is the Handicapping the Hardwood segment. So that's what we do. We talk college basketball. We're going to head on down to the SoCon here today, the Southern Conference. Pretty decent league overall this year. There's some very good teams. There's some average teams. There are some teams that aren't very good, but at least those teams that aren't very good are still pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think the SoCon is a better league than it's been most of the years in the past. You've got, 4 or 5 teams that are pretty good here at the top of this conference. The SoCon, as I was trying to look through this yesterday, I was trying to find some betting angles that I thought would be really interesting. I have to tell you, on sides, as far as ATS, it's very hard to find angles that really stand out here in the SoCon, which kind of surprises me because it's so far under the radar. But underdogs are 702, 698, and then 25 pushes. That's just about dead even at 50-50. So there's nothing there. And then road teams are 708, 693, and 24, and that's since 2005. So road teams just a tiny edge, but not much. I will say there is a bit of an edge here toward the teams who are looking for revenge. 297 and 274 ATS, if you've had an ATS loss to that team before, that's something you're going to want to look at, not just in the SoCon, also other places. Revenge is a pretty good angle in college basketball, especially road revenge. So keep that in mind that if a team lost ATS at home against that team and then the second game plays on the road, that's definitely a good look. The last one on sides that I wanted to mention, teams who average 12 turnovers or fewer per game. This isn't going to happen too often, obviously, but they're 204 and 169 ATS, which is 54.7%. So not too surprisingly, taking care of the basketball has been pretty important here in this league.
Are there any teams that fall into that category here this year with 12 or fewer turnovers per game in the SoCon?
Yeah, Wofford fits that. And I mean, that makes sense that they're the best team. I think Furman is either fitting that or just barely not fitting that. Wofford is the one that stands out as the team that takes care of the ball, and they've done that every year. It's part of the reason that Wofford has been so good. Wofford does not really play that good at defense. This year, they're better on defense than they have been in the past years, but they take care of the ball very well, and they have some very good shooters. When you're that efficient on offense and not turning the ball over and then being that good at shooting, it could be pretty tough to beat you, even if you're not that good on defense.
Now, I guess the follow-up question I would have here is that just in conference play, or is that for the season as a whole with the 12 or fewer turnovers?
Yeah, that's just conference play. I tried to exclude all the non-conference stuff because the SoCon's playing against teams that are better than them, usually in the non-conference schedule. So I thought that might be a little bit too much noise as far as stats for the SoCon.
I mean, that makes sense. You're talking about teams that are down in the Southeast, so they'll play the ACC, the SEC. They'll play a lot of major conference opponents in the non-conference, so that definitely makes a lot of sense there. So you mentioned some ATS side angles. How about some totals angles that you're looking at in the SoCon?
Yeah, there's some definitely some better ones here. So the over is 254 and 216, which is exactly 54% when the total is 137 or lower. So if you find a low total in the SoCon, the over has been a good look. Very interesting here is since 2015, 2016 season, that's when the rule changes were put in place. The over is 54 and 32 with a total of 137 or lower. So low totals here in the SoCon. Be really careful if you want to take the under because that hasn't worked out. And certainly I would lean toward taking overs. And I don't think that you should just blindly bet every single over in a situation like this, but it makes you want to look at the game. It makes you want to at least investigate a little bit farther. And then I wanted to say one more. The over is a whopping 84 and 42 in Wofford's home games since 2005 in the conference. So 84 and 42 is a very significant angle. That has to do with Wofford's shooting has been much better at home than it has been on the road. That's the case for most teams. But like I said, Wofford is so efficient on offense that even though they don't play very fast and they can have some fairly low totals, they're shooting the ball so well and not turning it over that they're putting up quite a few points.
So here's something I want to ask you about with regards to the overs in the low total games. I'm curious to hear from you on this. When odds makers are setting totals, I mean, obviously pace and tempo are very significant and probably the biggest driving force. What else factors into the equation? Is it effective field goal percentage? Is it points per possession? How do they sort of come to their totals numbers? Do you know?
Well, I mean, I think it's I don't know what they do, but I think I know what they should do. I would think that pace is the most important. I mean, if you're not paying attention to tempo and how many possessions there's going to be in the game, that'd be a big problem. But I think efficiency as far as points per possession would be the second most important, because you need to figure out, if you're trying to figure out field goal percentage, turnovers, all that, points per possession really takes care of all that. You just look at the efficiency of the offense versus the efficiency of the defense. How many points per possession do you think the team is going to get? And then you figure out, okay, how many possessions do you think they're going to have? So, I mean, you can extrapolate that pretty easily just from that. So I would think that, you go with possessions first and then efficiency to try to figure out where that total should be at.
See, and the reason why I ask is because the SoCon is littered with bad defensive teams. I mean, you've got one team in the top 100 in effective field goal percentage defense. That's Samford, who played a miserable non-conference schedule. So that's the only reason why they're in the top 100 right now, and they've been regressing here in conference play. So when all is said and done, the highest team might be Furman in the 110, 115 area in effective field goal percentage defense. So if you get a game here in the SoCon with a low tempo that's going to have a low total, it's still a couple of lackluster defensive teams, which is probably why this is going over. So, at such a high rate.
Yeah, and I think what that is, whether it be the odds makers or the public that moves the numbers, whatever it may be, I'm probably looking too much at just tempo. If you look at just tempo, and I would say that I think that's one of the things that I've improved on over the years is that I knew that tempo was really important from the beginning. That's definitely true. But, I could find myself taking SoCon games under several years ago thinking, man, this is going to be a really slow paced game. I got to take under 135. I mean, I think that efficiency is very close second to tempo as far as how important it is at totals betting. And that's something that, I've come to figure out more and more as you look at both college basketball, college football, look every sport when it comes to that. NFL would be the same way, but I think that it's important to keep in mind that it's not just tempo. Tempo is very important, but it's not everything. I mean, you can have a game with 60 possessions, but if both teams shoot extremely well, you could have 140 some points. So keep that in mind going forward that, the SoCon, like you said, Adam, is littered with some really bad defenses. And there actually are quite a few teams who can shoot the ball well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there aren't a lot of teams that get to the free throw line here in this conference, but yet it's still predominantly an over conference.
Right. Yeah, it's so many three-pointers being made, so many jump shots that are open. Not too many people getting to the line, not too many teams fouling all that much. But, when you're shooting that well, you don't even need the trips to the line. You can look at these conference by conference, and it's unique in that, there's some conferences, in order to get their points, there's going to need to be a ton of fouls. I think of like the AAC, I think of the Big West, stuff like that, where they're really not that good of shooters, but they do a lot of hacking. That's not the case here in the SoCon.
All right, so as we look at this year's version of the SoCon, you've got Wofford at the top. They're a perfect 10-0 in conference play. UNC Greensboro coming on very strong in conference play. They're 9-1. ETSU 8-2 here so far. Then a little bit of a drop on down from Furman and the rest of the teams. How do you stack up the SoCon this year, Kyle?
Yeah, I'll say how I would stack them up and then just give a brief tidbit about some of them here. Wofford, certainly the most consistent team in the league. I will say that the thing that concerns me about them is they're so reliant on jump shots. And we talk about that when it comes conference tournament time, which honestly is not as far away as it seems. Always look forward to those shows. But
Dude, you
Wofford,
want to talk about conference? Like, I saw that Conference USA's last regular season conference game is February 16th. It's insane how close these things are already.
yeah, the Conference USA is doing some really strange scheduling things, which I don't think either one of us can really figure out. But the conference tournaments really are not that far away, and that's just kind of a point that emphasizes that. Yeah, I mean, Wofford would scare me a little bit in the conference tournament just because they're so reliant on jump shots. East Tennessee State, I would put second. Look, they have a tremendous coach. I think he's probably going to have a bigger job sometime soon. I'm really impressed at the job that Forbes has done here. That, consistently East Tennessee State is losing a lot of people, big time turnover, and they're still there yet again. Very good team. They play good defense. They can force some turnovers. Just an efficient team overall. Furman, look, they're not as good as they looked in the non-conference, but they're still a solid team. They've been a little bit inconsistent here in SoCon play. UNC Greensboro, they haven't played the toughest of schedules so far in the SoCon, and they're going to have some tougher games coming up. But they're interesting in that they're very fast-paced, but they're pretty good on defense. So it can be tricky to bet their totals. Usually I stay away from Greensboro's totals. Samford, been very close in most of their losses. This is a team that is not far off at all. Certainly a quality team, better than their record would look. The next team, I say Mercer. Mercer, the thing about them is in the past, I've really liked taking unders with Mercer. This year, they've been involved in a lot more high-scoring games. Fortunately, I haven't bet any Mercer totals so far this year. But, they're just a team that's gotten worse on defense, better on offense. They sped up just a little bit. So that's definitely a big change from what they've been in the past. I think after this, there's a huge drop-off. I'm trying to figure out what to do with, who would be up next. And I see, man, these teams are a lot worse. So Chattanooga, I have after that. Chattanooga is unique in that they're playing slow, but they're so bad at defense that they can have some really high-scoring games like they did last night on Thursday night. Citadel after that. Citadel's tough to rate. I mean, Citadel is so unique in the way that they play. And as you alluded to earlier, they're one of these bottom feeders. It's still kind of fun because they do things differently. Western Carolina, just not a very good team, but they've shown glimpses of being capable. VMI at the bottom. VMI has struggled now for several years. I assume they'll probably be having some changes coming at VMI, but to me, this VMI team just really doesn't have anything going for it.
Well, and again, you talk about the SoCon, and you mentioned a team like the Citadel. I mean, there are some pretty good pace wars in this conference from time to time.
Yeah, definitely. You get them against Wofford. You get them against several of these teams. Furman. You can get a pretty good pace war going, and Chattanooga is another one that plays really slowly. So you have some teams like Citadel, and then East Tennessee State likes to play fast. They slow people down on defense. UNC Greensboro plays fast as well. So definitely can get some good pace wars here.
You mentioned East Tennessee State. They are top 10 in both offensive rebounding percentage and limiting opposition's offensive rebounds. So they're very, very good on the glass. That'll be a factor that I'm sure we talk about when we get to the SoCon Conference tournament. How about some scheduling spots in this league? I mean, a lot of these teams very, very close to each other. This is not a spread out league at all. Any scheduling or situational spots that you do like to try and capitalize on?
Yeah, I looked up this one too to see if there were any of them. You know how we talked about Georgia State in the Sun Belt, South Dakota State being the dominant team. There's not really one dominant team to where after you play that team that people have done really poorly. It kind of is a difficult league to find really tough spots. I would say that I think the Furman Wofford back-to-back that teams have to play pretty often is a tough double in that both of these teams are just good teams. You put so much into a game against Wofford and then you have to play Furman, or even the other way around. I mean, Furman won those big games in the non-conference season. Teams are definitely going to be gunning for them. I mean, they were in the top 25 for a while, as we talked about. They shouldn't have been in the top 25, but they were in the top 25 for a while. And, other teams want to knock them off because of that. And then you've got Wofford, who's been, pretty consistently, if not the best team, one of the top teams in this league. I think that's a tough double, especially if you get that Thursday, Saturday, quick turnaround, which you do pretty often here in the SoCon.
Definitely a good league to dig into, and obviously we'll do some more digging into it once their conference tournament rolls around. We transition to our fade and follow segment here. A couple of teams that Kyle's looking to sell the stock or maybe buy some stock. Who are you looking to fade right now?
Yeah, Valparaiso. This is a team where they're shorthanded due to injury problems. Played a weak non-conference schedule. This is a team, and actually I believe it's Valparaiso. So sorry for saying Valparaiso. I know both are sad. I think Valparaiso is actually correct according to the locals. But 3 straight tough games coming up. Played a weak non-conference schedule. They're shorthanded due to injuries right now. This is a team that just lost in overtime at home to Missouri State in what was a really good game. I think this team's going to have some trouble coming up. I don't think that they have the kind of depth that they need to withstand these injury problems. And now that you get into the tough part of their schedule, I think that they could struggle quite a bit.
The Missouri Valley's been a tough conference to figure out this year. We were talking about that, excuse me, with Tony George on yesterday's show, that the trusty home teams have not been as trustworthy as they usually are.
Yeah, and I think that as far as the ATS side, I went back and looked at this in the Missouri Valley. ATS home teams are barely better than 50%. I think that maybe we say too much about home court advantage. Maybe it was better ATS in the past, if I remember correctly. I believe back 10 years ago they had done better ATS, and now that's probably been something that people talk about so much. I know that a lot of people say right away the MVC got to take the home team. Keep that in mind as you go forward. I think that the odds makers have priced that in at this point. But I will say that the Missouri Valley is definitely a tough conference to figure out this year. I've been surprised all year with how Drake's played. They finally had a bad game the other day. Illinois State is starting to come on. I think it's a wide open league. Look, I mean, the MVC is not near as good as it used to be. Remember when, Wichita State was dominating it, or even back in the day that Creighton was. But MVC is still an interesting conference. And I think Valparaiso going forward, probably a team that will struggle here. I think that their record in the conference is a little bit better than what they actually are as a team, especially with their injury issues right now. The team I'd like to follow right now, Iona. They've been on a tough stretch of late, and we've talked about them a couple times here throughout the year. They're a talented team. They've been good at home. They're well coached. They usually get better throughout the course of the season to where they're playing their best basketball at the end of the year. I see a positive stretch coming for them here. They've got 3 straight home games ahead. I think if the odds makers are too low on Iona based on their recent struggles, that we could find some value here on the Gales.
The MAAC is another fascinating conference, and maybe we'll do that one, here coming up. I know we had a listener request about doing the Horizon League, so we'll probably do that on Monday. No show next Friday on Bang the Book Radio, so maybe we'll try to get our second segment with Kyle somewhere else. But the MAAC is a good conference for us to talk about here, too, because that's another one that's got a lot of those pace war types of games.
Oh, yeah, I love that conference. It's one of my favorite conferences as well. It tends to be a lot of those conferences that have the pace wars, and who I think is able to control the tempo to be what they want it to be is where I bet a lot of totals. So definitely would be interested to talk in a league like that. And like I said, I think Iona is not as good as they've been in past years, but I think that they're a little bit better than they've shown of late. So I think there could be some value on them.
All right, so we transition to some games that you're looking at here for this weekend. The one that tops the whatever metric it is that he uses over at his website to organize the games of the day. This one is at the top of the board. Not any surprise to anybody that's been paying attention. North Carolina on the road at Louisville. This is a game that means a lot to the Tar Heels.
Yeah, I mean, can they get their road revenge? I talked about it earlier. You just take road revenge in conference play. You figure out, okay, it's done pretty well by itself. You start figuring out teams that take care of the ball, play some decent defense. You can get some pretty strong angles on road revenge. I will say that, I think Louisville is really overachieving. I think that speaks to how well they're coached. Chris Mack people have to quit underrating him. He's done so well everywhere he's been. North Carolina, this is a team that's kind of a little bit hard to figure out. And North Carolina is not quite as good at offensive rebounds this year as they've been in the past. And that's been their single biggest strength many of these years. So they're not getting quite as many second chance opportunities as they have in past seasons. They're only fourth in the ACC in offensive rebounding, which is strange. I always just assume they're going to be first in this league in offensive rebounding percentage. Not the case so far this year. Defensively, they're pretty good. On the year, they're 13th efficiency in the country, according to Ken Palm, fourth in the ACC. This North Carolina team's a good team, but you wonder if they're really a good enough team to cut down the nets. I would say I don't think they are. Certainly wouldn't be shocking if they proved me wrong, but I think this game's going to tell us a lot about them. They need to win a game like this. Louisville is 16-5. Louisville's not quite as good as they've looked like they are, in my opinion. Like I said, talent-wise, North Carolina has the better talent. North Carolina should be highly motivated in a game like this. And I have to say, I'm really interested to see what this line comes out at. I see KP has -2 on Louisville. I would assume that they won't be favored by 2. I think, they might be favored by 1 or be close to pick 'em because of the situation. But very curious to see what this line comes out at. And if I had to lean towards something in this game, I'd probably lean toward the under, based on the fact that Louisville will be trying to slow this game down. I think that when both teams are highly motivated, it helps the under, and I would think that both teams would be very motivated for this game.
Yeah, looking at what Torvik's got, he's got -2.6 on Louisville. I think that's probably a little bit optimistic as well. And when you look at this game here, in the previous meeting, the worst home loss ever for North Carolina under Roy Williams. And that doesn't happen in Chapel Hill. That does not happen in the Dean Dome. We'll see. I mean, this is one of those things too, where for Chris Mack, I mean, you said you think he's overachieving a little bit. We talk about how maybe sometimes performances and outcomes don't get graded the way that they should. Maybe a team beats a bad team in a tough situational spot, and people go, well, yeah, that team sucks. And we look at it and go, no, that's a really good win. Louisville gets this one. I know it's a good win because North Carolina's a top 10 team, but given what happened in the first meeting, given what North Carolina has on its mind in this meeting, a Louisville regular season sweep is going to be really, really impressive.
Oh, absolutely. If Louisville wins this game, immediately their stock goes up quite a bit more. This is a team that would be playing for some really impressive seeding after, they weren't expected to be doing much of anything. So this Louisville team has really overachieved so far this year. I think this is a game where it's easy to say that, North Carolina would be the team that's more motivated. I assume North Carolina is going to be supremely motivated for this game. But, Chris Mack's a really good coach, and Louisville has plenty of reasons to be excited for this game and prove themselves as well. So no real strong lean on this game. I just thought it was an interesting one to talk about based on the level of revenge that North Carolina has here.
All right, so we head out to the Big West here for the Degenerate Special out on the island. Santa Barbara takes on Hawaii. What's so intriguing about this game for you, Kyle?
Well, Santa Barbara's played some really tough games here of late. They just lost in overtime on Thursday night to UC Irvine in a game that was nationally televised. They've played 3 really good teams, and actually 4 pretty good teams if you consider UC Davis a pretty decent team as well. UC Davis on the road, Cal State Fullerton on the road, Long Beach State on the road, come home, play UC Irvine, lose in overtime, then leave to go to Hawaii to play this game. That's a brutal, brutal spot here for UCSB. I think UCSB is a little bit better team than is Hawaii, but this is a very, very bad spot for them. There's no way I could take UCSB in this game. Hawaii will be favored. I think Hawaii will probably win this game. The other thing that I like about this game, though, is I kind of like the over. Hawaii has been sneaky good on offense here this year. Once you get in the league, you look at their numbers, 1.101 points per possession, second best in the Big West. Effective field goal percentage, 55.6%, first in the conference. They're playing a little bit faster than they did last year as well, especially in the conference. UCSB is a really good offense, or they have been in the past. Some of their shooters haven't been shooting the ball as well as you would expect this year, but I think UCSB is going to end up being a pretty good offense again this year. This is going to be a fairly low total because of the tempo that these two teams play at. If we see a 135, 135 and a half, it wouldn't be surprising here. I like the over some, and I like Hawaii some. This is just a really, really bad spot for UCSB.
All right, speaking of bad spots, we've got one in a major conference here to discuss. Oregon State. What's the story for the Beavers here on Saturday?
Yeah, back-to-back at altitude for Oregon State. Look, Utah's not really that good of a team this year, and I think in some ways that might even help us here because, they're not going to be laying the kind of price that you would usually see a quality team laying. This is definitely a Utah or nothing spot for me. If you look at this one, it's, Utah came off that loss to Oregon last night. Utah's 5-3 in the league, which, and so is Oregon State, by the way. Being 5-3 in the Pac-12 is really nothing to be that excited about. Pac-12 is what it is, and it's been a terrible conference so far this year. I think Washington's the one team that really impresses me from this conference. They're really well coached, tough to go against that matchup zone. Oregon's a tricky matchup as well, but they've found ways to lose some games that they shouldn't lose. This is a Utah team that's coming off a loss. What are they going to be? I mean, they're going to be laying 1.5, 2 points, something like that in this game. And you get Oregon State team that is, better than they've been in some of the years in the past. They just came off that road win at Colorado by 2 points. Now they have to do it again, just 2 days later. I mean, this is definitely a strong lean for me for Utah, and this one might end up being a premium. It's just one of those where they'd have to prove it to me that they can win 2 games in a row at altitude.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, that was a back and forth type of affair. A lot of drama over the last really 7 or 8 minutes in that game for Oregon State against Colorado. Also, too, and this is something I mentioned on my Wednesday video over on YouTube, looking at some situational spots here for this weekend. That was a late game in Colorado. I think it was a 9 o'clock Eastern time or something like that. They play at 3 o'clock local time in Salt Lake City tomorrow. So way less than 48-hour turnaround for this back-to-back in altitude. I think you're definitely onto something there, liking the Utes side of this thing.
Yeah, this is my favorite one of the ones that we're talking about, the one that's most likely to be a premium. I do like Hawaii some, and I like the over in that one also. But Utah, it's just too good of a spot. I mean, as long as I'm not priced out of this one, certainly hope that, it doesn't come out at -4 or -4.5 or something like that. I'd be surprised if it did based on how bad Utah's been in some of their games here this year. But, we'll see what happens. It's always price dependent, certainly.
All right, one more game to touch on here as we go down to the Sun Belt. Seems very fitting that we'd wrap up with the Sun Belt here. A real strong game, Georgia Southern and Georgia State.
Yeah, this is a rivalry game, and it's a really big game in the Sun Belt standings as well. Georgia State's been a little bit disappointing this year, haven't been quite as consistent as some people would have expected. Both of these teams have played a really tough schedule so far this year compared to most Sun Belt teams. I think that both of these teams are going to be teams that could win the conference tournament. Certainly the fact that they played so many tough teams in the non-conference should help these teams going forward. Depending on how this game goes, too, I wanted to say that I think this could be a really hard-fought game, close game. There could certainly be a letdown spot for these teams after this. So look at that next contest and say, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, let's see how this game goes. If it's back and forth, could be an overtime type game, could be one of those games that there's a lot of swings emotionally in the game. I think the game after this is dangerous for both of these teams because they put so much into a game like this. So more than really wanting to bet this game, which I think, will be a pretty high scoring game, but there's going to be a high total on this game. So I doubt I'll be able to take the over. Should be a close game all the way. I wanted to give a little bit of love to the Sun Belt like we do as often as we can. And then say that, I feel like this is one of those spots where you want to try to look ahead. Keep an eye on how this game goes and then see. It might create us a good letdown spot after this.
Yeah, and what's interesting here is that, this is one of those conferences that does play a lot of the Thursday, Saturday games. quicker turnaround here for Georgia Southern. They play Wednesday at Louisiana Lafayette and then play Friday against Louisiana Monroe. So we got some Wednesday, Friday stuff going on here in the Sun Belt. So a little bit quicker of a turnaround. These teams are travel partners. They both go to Louisiana. Georgia State will play Monroe on Thursday night. And, from the looks of it, too, they could have a couple of up-tempo games immediately following this rivalry matchup.
Yeah, definitely. And that could be tricky, and like you said, with the condensed schedule right after it there, that makes it even a tougher spot. So, like I said, it depends on how this game goes. If one team blows out the other team, then it is less of a letdown spot for the team, especially for the team that just got blown out. But I assume this will be a close game back and forth. And then, we kind of try to look ahead. I think it's nice to try to not just look at the game that's happening right now, look ahead and see what kind of spots might be created in the future. And I think that this is one of those games that could create some good betting opportunities going forward.
I got to say, man, I'm disappointed we didn't close with the Ivy League. I know it's your favorite.
Oh, yeah. Ivy League. I've almost just, when I start looking down through the Ivy League games, so it's like, oh, I kind of like, no, don't do it. It's talk myself out of it if I can at all, just because Ivy League is so unpredictable. And I think it makes sense. You're playing those Friday, Saturday games. It's so much different than any other league. It's just a good pass for me. So much better to close with the Sun Belt than the Ivy League.
Kyle Hunter, professional handicapper over at huntersportspicks.com, also writing daily for us at bangthebook.com. What's going on over at your website right now, man?
Lowered some prices on the premium packages. You can check out the subscriptions to save and try to get a better deal there for the long term. Certainly don't discourage anybody from buying the daily packages, but at the same time, I think those subscriptions are the way to go if you're looking long term. You're not going to pay near as much as what you would with the daily. So check out all those at huntersportspicks.com and also sign up for the free picks newsletter. I'll have some free picks coming up and also some of those contests where you can win either free premium plays or some cash going forward. So you can sign up for that free picks newsletter right from huntersportspicks.com.
And, of course, keep an eye out on our Bang the Book YouTube page. Kyle will have a video here today looking at the Saturday college basketball betting card. Kyle Hunter, huntersportspicks.com, daily at bangthebook.com, at Kyle Hunter Picks on Twitter. Appreciate the time as always, brother. Thank you so much, man, and we'll talk to you again on Monday.
Sounds good. Thanks.